the Deputy Superintendent of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and Andrew Devogelaere, a research ecologist with the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which is celebrating 30 years. Congratulations on this milestone.
Yeah, it's a great milestone, and what better way to celebrate it than with K-Squid?
That's right. We intentionally named our radio station K-Squid because we wanted to honor one of the many creatures living in our midst or right outside our midst. And I know some people like to eat them and others just like to look at them, and all of that's okay. We are very proud to have a Humboldt squid as our mascot. So 30 years. Let's tell people maybe what is a marine sanctuary anyway. I'll let Dawn start and then you can pile on.
Yes, Rachel. The National Marine Sanctuaries are designated as special places around the country, areas that have very special aesthetic qualities or great natural resources, even cultural resources. Our very first National Marine Sanctuary was the wreck of the USS Monitor in North Carolina. So there's a wide range of things that make a sanctuary, and the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary happens to have all of the qualities outlined in the National Marine Sanctuaries Act.
And what are some of those protections? A lot of people think about it as a complete ban on everything extractive. A lot of people don't understand what it does and doesn't do. So maybe we'll continue this. Well, what is it and what isn't it?
Well, sanctuaries, a lot of people think of sanctuaries as underwater national parks. But national parks are, nothing in, nothing out. They're very, very highly managed. Whereas national marine sanctuaries are much more likened to national forests, where this is managed use. And we really don't, manage the sanctuary. We manage the use and the people and how they use the sanctuary. And our task is to make that balance between managed use, recreation, and conserving the resources for generations to come.
So what's off limits there? There are some things that you can't do in there.
The absolute off limit is there is no exploration or extraction of oil, gas, or minerals. That is something that we can't even do a permit for. So that's our absolute.
And what things are allowed? What are some of the maybe uses that humans are doing out there? We've probably seen people fishing.
Sure. Well, I mean, we do have a series of regulations, like there can be no new dredging areas. We have to permit any new discharges into the sanctuary if they'll be allowed. You can't disturb the seafloor bed. There's limits on how low you can fly over certain areas of the sanctuary. So
I saw someone violating that just about an hour ago. Sorry, I'm not going to think on them, but they were into World War I.
Yeah. Well, actually, it can be confusing because there are some areas where you can fly low and others where you can't. Like the Elkhorn Slough is a spectacular estuary that's part of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and there you can't fly your drones without a permit. But in some of the areas off Santa Cruz, you can. We try to keep people away from like the bird rookeries. Yeah. But as Dawn mentioned, we do allow lots of activities. What's interesting and makes the sanctuary involved with so many issues is that we're also supposed to promote multiple use of the sanctuary as long as there's protection to keep things in good shape for the future generation. So if somebody wants to put in a seawall, we'll probably be involved. If someone wants to put a cable through the sanctuary in the deep sea, we'll be involved. If the Navy wants to do some testing with sound, we'll be involved. But mostly we like to inform, have discussions, and find solutions with the community rather than doing too much regulating.
Now, we didn't talk about the boundaries. I know that, in a national park, there's clear, boundaries. There's a entrance even. And the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, where does it begin and end? Just in a general sense. Of course, there's no markers out there in the bay.
Right. It spans from just the southern portion of Marin, just above the Golden Gate, down to Cambria. And it averages about 25 miles offshore.
And when boaters or, in the case of someone doing something like drilling, it's all on maps, I assume. So you wouldn't see a buoy there at the entrance to the marine sanctuary. But you would hopefully know you were in it and what was allowed there.
Yes. I mean, it's 6,000 square miles. It's huge. It's bigger than some of the states in the U.S. But with today's technology, the airplanes and the boats know where they are. In fact, recently there was a large dry dock, which is something you pull a big ship into and then remove the water and then it floats. And it was being moved from Washington down to Mexico. And as it was being towed, it started to sink. And you can see on the tracks of the tow vehicle that they immediately started heading west to get out of the sanctuary because they knew if it fell in and disturbed the seafloor bed, there'd be some consequences. Unfortunately, they didn't make it and it sank. And now we're working with how to mitigate the damage that was caused by that.
Wow. So you have a big regulatory role and a enforcement role. Do you have enough budget for that? That's always the question, right? We have this big state park system, and sometimes it's in disrepair because there's not enough money.
I don't think any federal agency ever has the proper funding to do what it's tasked to do. We could easily double our budget and our staff, but that's not what Congress has provided, unfortunately.
So does that mean that people poaching, sea otters or something aren't going to get in trouble because there's just not enough people to enforce that, or?
Well, actually, sea otters fall under a different a different agency.
Other
They're
protection.
actually, they're under the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Just like fisheries, the management of fisheries falls under the National Marine Fisheries Service, which is another NOAA agency. So we don't actually regulate fisheries. That's a different group. And in state waters, it's California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So there are a whole lot of people that we collaborate with on a regular basis because all of us have that same challenge. So we work with the U.S. Coast Guard, we work with Fish and Wildlife, we work with both the state and the federal side, and there are numerous other partners. Even the local municipalities and the harbor masters and their fire departments are folks that keep their eyes and ears open for us and work with us, along with the Office of Law Enforcement. We typically have a NOAA OLE officer assigned to Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Right now we're in between, but even then, we encompass 274 miles of coastline, and it's very hard if you have just one person. So we also partner with California State Parks and all of their rangers. We happen to have many state parks within the boundaries of Monterey Bay Sanctuary. So it's definitely something that we couldn't do alone, but we do in partnership because we all value the resources.
And don't you have volunteers that are like docents that help people learn about the sanctuary when they're wandering around in it?
Absolutely. Stewardship is key. We have volunteers and docents, and the difference is in what they do and how they're trained. But we have docents that are actually out on the water in kayaks, our T-Motion program, that interact with other kayakers, and we call that interpretive enforcement, where if you teach somebody about what's right and how to do it right, typically they didn't know, and they didn't know any better that they shouldn't get so close to an animal. And as soon as they know, they follow that and they tell that to other people. We've seen that, even in the tide pools. Look with your eyes, not your hands, and people pass those things on. So community engagement is key, and the community is why the sanctuary is here. This is a grassroots effort that brought the idea of protection and sanctuary to the Monterey Bay region, and it was grassroots efforts that kept at it for over 10 years, trying to beat not beat the system, but the system. We were on the list twice and removed from the list, and it was a third time was a charm, and it was wonderful to see that perseverance and the value that the local community placed on this special place in order to protect it.
If you just joined me here on Talk of the Bay, I'm Rachel Goodman speaking with Dawn Hayes. She's the Deputy Director of the National Marine Sanctuary right outside our window, the Monterey Bay one. There are many other marine sanctuaries we'll talk about in a minute. And I'm also here with Andrew Devogelaere, who is a research ecologist and one of four. That's a pretty wonderful position you have there. Tell me what you do on it sounds like a great job. Do you just go around in a boat and look at stuff.
Yeah, right. So I'm in charge of the research program for the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and we're supposed to monitor the resources, everything living out there, seeing if it's doing well, if it's not doing well. We're supposed to characterize, what actually lives out there, so what lives out there, how it changes through time, and then when there are resource management issues to be addressed, when there's a problem and like kelp loss, we do the research to find out what are the answers to solve some of these problems, to inform the resource managers. And then we also provide information to our educators. So that's what our little research team does. When you have 6,000 square miles and a dozen habitats to look at, and when you're going out at sea on a boat that costs $30,000 a day, it's not some things you're going to do with our tiny staff and our tiny budget. We have collaborators, the best in the world, living around the Monterey Bay. We have, depending on how you count them, between 24 and 50 different research organizations around the Monterey Bay. Some of the smartest people in the world, some of the most dedicated and motivated, and we get to work with them to address all of these kinds of issues.
So we're like the Woods Hole of the West. Are we actually exceeding the number of scientists per square inch from Woods Hole? It seems like we have
no doubt
surpassed it.
Yeah, no doubt. We're not we're beyond Woods Hole, we're beyond Scripps, we're beyond any other group in the world. So in some ways, we have the information to be models and develop technology that can be shared throughout the world. And with our education program and working with MBARI and the Monterey Bay Aquarium and UC Santa Cruz and Cal State Monterey Bay, we can really get the word out across the nation. A lot of different countries come here to figure out how to do things.
And certainly we've been the subject of many documentaries. I mean, when National Geographic wants to do something on whales, they come here because they know they're going to find some.
Exactly.
And there's a number of very charismatic species, some of which we've never heard of. Not the charismatic ones, but the lesser famed creatures that you're discovering in the deep is a story in and of itself. And I wanted to get you to talk about that a little bit. We have the deepest submarine canyon of anywhere, I guess. And in that depths are weird things that you couldn't go look at before the technology made it possible. Can you talk about some of these odd to us? They're not odd to themselves, obviously.
Right.
But they're strange to us because we had just now seeing these creatures.
Yes, yeah. Well, one of the reasons we have the sanctuary here is because when we get on a boat and we have a cup of coffee, by the time we've finished our cup of coffee, we're in thousands of feet of water. We're on the East Coast. It might take them a day to get out at that depth. We also have organizations that can operate remotely operated vehicles at these depths, particularly MBARI. And so we have easy and regular access. And when we go down there, the exciting thing for all the young marine scientists out there is we're still discovering new species. And there are many times when I feel like me and the people in our room are the first human eyes to ever look at a certain area of the seafloor and a certain animal. So we do see all sorts of strange things down there. I do research, and I'm particularly excited about deep sea corals. There are corals in the deep sea, particularly on Davidson Seamount and this area called Sur Ridge, that are bigger than you, Rachel.
That's impossible.
Yes, they're even, as much as I eat, they're even bigger than me. Okay. And they're pink. There's some that are golden in color, and they're these fantastic animals that live hundreds, even thousands of years. And so they're very charismatic, but we really didn't know much about them or even that they were there until about 15, 20 years ago. And now we have a site that we're calling our Deep Sea Coral Observatory, where we're actually visiting them regularly. We have cameras that take pictures of them regularly, and we're finally starting to understand how these amazing creatures work and how critical they are for the deep sea ecosystem. So that's one. I could go on for a while, but I really, want to those are charismatic, right? They're things everybody's excited about. But there's less charismatic things like the goop, the jellyfish that when I was a student, you'd pull a net and it was the junk at the bottom of the net and you'd say, oh man, I can't find my fish, throw it over the side. Well, we've learned now that we're not just dragging nets around that these are beautiful creatures, lacy, just like artwork. They have flickering lights of bioluminescence. They're communicating with each other. They're making houses and filters. There's one animal in the Monterey Bay called a giant larvation that makes a gelatinous house that in the height of its abundance in the summertime, it actually filters most of the Monterey Bay every 13 days. So it's cleaning out the bay, and then when its filters get clogged, it drops them, and this marine snow drifts down to the seafloor and provides food for other animals. So,
and we'll never see those if we're swimming around on the surface. We can't get that deep without the bends or something awful happening. That's right. So, but you're sending these remotely operated vehicles to look at these things. And doesn't the Monterey Bay Aquarium have a camera where you can go into a room somewhere and see some of these amazing diaphanous creatures floating around on a screen? Yeah,
they used to have a live link to one of their ships. Now what I think is even more exciting, and it's partly because of the discoveries we worked on with our partners around here, there's that new exhibit. There's the deep sea exhibit at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and it's showing off some of these animals that we love to see and work with. And, nowadays, too, there's, if you sort of get into that realm and start looking at these YouTubes and posts, you'll start getting feeds of all sorts of small video clips of these amazing animals in the deep.
If you like one of their videos, pretty soon all you're going to see is Larvaceae, right? These
and to me that's a good thing.
Yeah, like them on Facebook.
That's right.
I love it. Well, here at K-Squid, we're fond of creatures in the ocean, especially squid, which I assume there's a big squid fishery still here. They're allowed to fish for squid because we see them at night, right?
Yes.
And again, you guys don't.
Town right now, the fisheries are in town
now, right? I remember on summer nights always seeing these big lights out there on the ocean, and I wanted to tell the people who fish that there's a station for them now called K-Squid. I don't know if they know that yet, but we definitely reach the bay itself as well. If you just joined me, we're talking about the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which is 30 years old this month, and they're celebrating this amazing creation that was pushed for by citizens. I understand there's another one being possibly advocated for to our south. Is that correct? There's one to our north already. Tell me what that would do if we had like contiguous protections of some things. Well, would it prevent drilling?
I was going to say, the proposed sanctuary to the south is the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, and it does abut the southern border of Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and it would move south towards the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, which is primarily offshore around the Channel Islands. They don't actually come to the shoreline, but having several, basically there are four, although Cordell Bank doesn't come ashore, but Greater Farallones, Monterey Bay, and the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuaries would create a very, long, continuous, marine protected area. And marine protected areas come in many shapes and sizes, and protect different things at different levels. So, again, sanctuaries aren't no-take areas. They're very different in what they protect, and each one is designated for a different reason. So we have both. All of us do have the prohibition against the oil, gas, and mineral exploration and extraction. So yes, we would definitely have that as a prohibition. Flat out.
But there's higher levels of protection too, as I understand it, and those are when like small fisheries are protected, where it's like a nursery area. Is the Elkhorn Slough one of those where even more things are prevented in that one space?
Yeah, the sanctuary worked hard with many people in the state of California in 2007 develop the state marine protected area boundaries along the coastline. And one of them is, in fact, in the Elkhorn Slough. Not the whole thing, but part of it, where there is no take.
Right. So these are like sanctuaries upon sanctuaries where it's supposed to be a nursery and allow these creatures to...
Yeah, some of them it's like no take, some of them you're allowed certain kinds of take, some there's no access, some there's no research. One of the things with working with Greater Fairlands to the north, Chumash and Channel Islands to the south that we'll probably be looking at, that I'm sure your listeners are interested in, is looking at interactions between shipping lanes and where whales are, and where the whale food is, and how that changes with the changing ocean conditions. But we've in the past changed where the shipping lanes, the voluntary shipping lanes are that people are following in Monterey, and we'll probably be shifting them again as we learn more about where the blue whales and humpback whales are and how they interact with the ships. For me, it's particularly interesting that we now have a new way of tracking these animals with hydrophones and sound. So we don't have to be out there looking for them. We can listen to them and pinpoint them, and we're learning how to overlay that with where the ships are to find the best routes for them to avoid each other.
We better keep those protections for whales in place, or that could be, in the wrong hands, a really good tool to go hunt them. Thankfully, there's a treaty that does not allow that.
Yes.
And that was hard fought by humans wanting to protect whales. Talk about any threats that are maybe, bigger, that are pressuring the marine sanctuary that we might want to know about. In particular, you mentioned, whales getting hit by boats. There's also potential impacts from deep sea mining outside of the sanctuary that could impact it, right? Talk about that.
Well, deep sea mining is being, it's actually been tested in a few places, off Japan in particular, where there's minerals that people want to collect, by scraping the bottom of the seafloor. There's manganese nodules, there's manganese crusts on rocks, and when these, the idea is to sort of suck them up with a big vacuum cleaner or a scraper, pull it to the surface with a suction, and then have the tubes that take the effluent from that and release it down into the ocean. It turns out that in these early efforts that releasing all of that sediment and fine dust and mud into the midwater of the ocean would prevent all of the organisms that communicate with bioluminescence, which is a huge proportion of the gelatinous creatures and small fish. And in fact, these layers of sediment are so fine that they just almost will drift forever. So if you think you have a marine protected area and we start doing deep sea mining around the world, that could be a problem. Now, fortunately, there's already scientists interested in this and doing studies. One local person, Steve Haddock at Mbari, is really into this and showing the problems. And they're talking about, well, maybe we shouldn't have this effluent go out into the middle of the ocean. It should go all the way back to the bottom, so all we're doing is ruining the seafloor and not everything above it. So
I hate to say this, but humans seem to have endless ways to just ruin the environment, and this seems like another really bad idea.
Fortunately, it's not going to happen off of California. Unfortunately, we don't know how far these plumes will drift.
Right. Like so many things, we're all part of the same thing. We're one planet after all. And the ocean is one ocean. There's not like a divide between the sanctuary and the rest of the ocean. So we are vulnerable to things happening elsewhere, like climate change, which we don't have time to talk about right now, but certainly on my mind today, as so many things around the globe are happening, including in a place I used to live in, Kentucky, with massive flooding. Just very hard to watch. Let's just close with some excitement here. What are some of the ways you're celebrating your 30-year anniversary with the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary?
Yes. It's exciting because we also share that anniversary with the National Marine Sanctuary System, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary. And some of the things that we are doing have to do with events that are happening. The first of which already happened, and that was at the at the wharf in Santa Cruz, where we were out with Shared Adventures. But coming up next Friday is the release of a new stamp series featuring the National Marine Sanctuaries, and that's going to be held at the Sanctuary Exploration Center.
These are U.S. postal stamps, so you can get them.
Yes.
Forever stamps.
Forever stamps.
And that center just reopened too. It was closed for 2 years.
For 2 years,
Yeah.
and we reopened last month, and
Right by the boardwalk and the wharf. In case you've never been there, you probably walked right by it, but it wasn't open. Now it is.
And it's free.
And it's
right,
free.
and it's free. So
Yeah.
August 5th is the day of issuance for the National Marine Sanctuaries stamp series, and then September 17th, the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is hosting a gala, and that can be found on their website. It's montereybayfoundation.org. And then September 18th, our actual birthday, our 30th anniversary, the sanctuary will be out on the wharf and doing all kinds of celebrations. We're actually partnering with Pupu'o, Hawaii, their Outrigger Canoe Club. They're having their canoe celebration and being out on the water. So the Aloha races will start at 9, and then we have activities after that up on the wharf, speakers and all of that, cake. But there'll be fish printing at or there'll be art activities at the Exploration Center and activities at Cal Beach.
That sounds really fun. Make sure you send us a public service announcement. We do run those, and just send it to psa@ksqd.org, and we'll run it for you. Thanks for being here. I've learned a lot, and I congratulate you for 30 great years protecting our bays and our ocean environment, and I look forward to the new things we're going to learn as the science comes out. I think I heard there was a mammoth tusk found in the deep submarine canyon, too, so never a dull moment, right?
That's right.
Right.
You'll
Thanks.
have the best jobs.
We do, and thanks for having us and sharing the word with the public. We live in one of the most spectacular places in the world, and we have to appreciate that.
We really do, and thank you for helping it be that much more wonderful by protecting it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks. This is Talk of the Bay on K-Squid, KSQD Santa Cruz. I've been speaking with Don Hayes, the Deputy Superintendent of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and Andrew Devogelaere, a research ecologist.